Greetings, vinyl community. It is mid-March, coming up on the first day of spring, coming up on the Ides of March. So today I'll be showing the sides of March. Start off with some new releases, and after that some mostly classic rock new acquisitions. Start off with the most recent release from Derek Higgins. Derek is really the guy who pretty much introduced me to the concept of a vinyl community on YouTube, so thanks, Derek. This is his new one, Future Still. This is from the FPE Records label. Fantastic artwork of Derek there on the back. In an electronic music vein of somewhat like EDM, but without that slamming bass. It is a beat-oriented 4/4, but it doesn't have that slamming sound. It's more of a groove. These are groove-based pieces for the most part, and very enjoyable stuff from Derek. And Derek showed this on his channel recently, and I've just picked this up. Japanese vocalist and electronic musician Phew, P-H-E-W, who has been associated with, I believe, Auger from Cannes. This is New Decade, a 6-track release of very ambient-oriented pieces. Very cool cover. This is, the gold part is not actually printed on. This is a sticker on the sort of sideways-oriented artwork. And this is on clear vinyl. It seemed like a very brief album, really nice, low-key, very experimental ambient stuff. More familiar name in the electronic music field, Tangerine Dream, their brand new double LP Room, or Room. Room in the sense of space, not in the sense of room of a house. The current incarnation of Tangerine Dream consists of Thorsten Queschning, Hoshiko Yamane, and Paul Frick. And this edition is on tangerine colored vinyl. There is some participation by the late Edgar Furza in the form of some sequences that he left, that they have worked on and incorporated into the new compositions. Mostly, this is pretty good in the classic Tangerine Dream vein. Maybe not the classic Tangerine Dream vein, but still a nice electronic feel. I haven't really followed Tangerine Dream since the 80s, and I did have one album of theirs in the 90s that I thought was really bad, and it was from the period when they were incorporating saxophone into the music. And this is quite a bit better than that. There's 1 or 2 tracks on here, most of the tracks being quite long. Side C, has 3 tracks, so they're a little bit shorter, and the first one on the side had a beat that I really did not go for. It didn't seem to mesh well with the rest of the music, and the beat itself was fairly, trite, I thought. But for the most part, this is a pretty enjoyable album. So, something of a return to form for Tangerine Dream. I don't know how their form has been for quite a few albums, but there we go. They are carrying on after the loss of Edgar Furza some years back. A new release from the Chicago-based avant-rock band Cheer Accident, Here Comes the Sunset. I love this cover artwork. Sort of different aspects and angles of the scene with the cowboy apparently having been gunned down there. This is a real varied set of 6 tracks in a hard to describe experimental avant-rock vein. Cheer Accident has been at this for a long time, and they've produced music in a lot of different formats and degrees of accessibility. And in this case, they do some really strange things, and in the middle of it, they do a faithful cover of Dream Police by Cheap Trick. Anyway, Emma, if you're out there, you got to hear this. I don't think Emma watches my videos, but maybe she does. So, new release from Cheer Accident, and this is once again on interesting looking vinyl. I think they just build this as random colored. And on my camera monitor, this just doesn't look very good, but take my word for it, it's an interesting looking marbly vinyl. I think they just build that as random vinyl. Made an interesting thrift store haul the other day. Normally, I see nothing in thrift stores. It's all Al Hurt, Helen Reddy, and 40 Great Beer Garden polkas. But this time somebody had evidently dropped a serious rock collection, so I came away with some very nice vintage stuff, vintage 60s pressings. Unfortunately not in the best of condition, but they were worth picking up at an average of $3 a pop, starting with Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger and the Trinity, and their album Open. Showed the album Jules and Brian not long ago, and this is similar in format. It's one side, side one, being devoted to Brian Auger and the Trinity, and then they're joined by Julie Driscoll for the side 2 tracks. The Brian Auger stuff is more jazzy, obviously more keyboard-based, includes Wes Montgomery's In and Out, and the percussion-oriented Goodbye Jungle Telegraph piece, all these other tracks written by Brian Auger. The Julie Driscoll side includes a cover of Tramp, the Otis Redding and Carla Thomas duet, and the hit, or at least I think it was a British hit, A Kind of Love-In, written by Brian Auger, and a stretched out version of Donovan's Season of the Witch. So that was one. The next one I found was John Mayall, Bare Wires. This is, I think, the closest John Mayall came to doing a really psychedelic album. Many of his covers look like they belong on really psychedelic albums. This is his most sort of psych prog, still with a blues basis. Side 1 is really one long suite. So you can tell he's putting together something in extended forms, multi-parts. He's got his horn section with Dick Hextall-Smith on saxophone, Chris Mercer on saxophone, and Henry Lowther on cornet and violin. Dick Hextall-Smith, John Heisman on drums, and Tony Reeves on bass all went on to form Coliseum. Mick Taylor is the guitarist on this, and he joined some other band. I don't know if they ever made it, but another album that has a lengthy suite based on the blues is Steppenwolf II, and this is a 60s pressing, as you can see, with the shiny metallic cover. And yes, most of side 2, after they get over with the Gabriel Meckler track 28 and the hit Magic Carpet Ride, the rest of the side is devoted to a lengthy multi-part suite based on the blues. This also includes the great track Tighten Up Your Wig, which is stolen wholesale from Messin' with the Kid by Junior Wells, which they acknowledge in the lyrics with the final lines, "Just before we go, I'd like to mention Junior Wells. You know, we stole this thing from him and he from someone else." Side 1 also ends with their great pro-marijuana song, "Don't Step on the Grass, Sam," concluding with a staged bust of the recording session. And the last album I picked up at the thrift store, Cricklewood Green by 10 Years After. This is from 1970, I think. I didn't look that up. I should have done my homework before starting the video. Really good album. This is the one where the vinyl is in the best condition. This actually sounds quite good. Probably because the music is loud enough that it drowns out any noise. The Steppenwolf and the John Mayall album both had skips that I managed to fix with the toothpick trick. In the case of the Steppenwolf, I did not think that would work. It had a tiny but very deep gouge that I thought was unfixable, but by God, I managed to get it to play through, just pushing the toothpick through it a few times. And the John Mayall had a teeny tiny little pinpoint ding in it that caused a skip, and same thing, I just pushed the toothpick through it along the grooves and that fixed it. This one didn't need it. This one sounds really nice. Good hard rock with blues vestiges. This is a bit more not exactly progressive, but moving towards the almost metalish sound. Just good rocking stuff. Little bit of electronics on there as well. Little bit experimental, but with the psychedelic and blues sounds still in place. Found this not at the thrift store, but in a bargain bin for 49 cents, and I'm not taking it out of the plastic because the cover was quite thrashed, which is how it got in the bargain bin in the first place. John Fahey, Guitar Volume 4, The Great San Bernardino Birthday Party and Other Excursions. Mostly solo guitar by John Fahey in the American primitive guitar style. He's joined by other musicians on a few tracks. There's a little organ, a little flute. The mysterious Al Wilson, as he is billed on Vina. I assume that's the same Al Wilson from Canned Heat. There are interpretations of a few familiar traditional tunes. There's 900 Miles, the hymn O Come Emmanuel, and Will the Circle Be Unbroken. This is, it's on the original Tacoma label, but with the second version of the cover. I think the first version was all text on the back. And continuing in the folkier vein, Steeleye Span, Below the Salt, their album from 1972. This was the first album after the founding member Ashley Hutchings left, along with Martin Carthy, and they were replaced by Robert Johnson on guitar and Rick Kemp on bass. I managed to score a still-sealed original of this. You can hear it. Still crackling when I open the gatefold. How about that? Beautiful copy, and this is on the original green chrysalis label. And as one expects from Steeleye Span, it's all adaptations of traditional British folk, including a version of John Barleycorn, very different, much more jaunty than the Traffic version that we all know. And, and the cover shows us two versions of Steeleye Span. Above and below the salt, there's the salt dish, and above the salt are the nobles, and below the salt are the peasants. But speaking of salt, I also found Salt Song by Stanley Turrentine on the CTI label. And you could get a print, an 11 by 14 inch custom-made photographic color print of this cover for only $19.50, thanks to the offer on the inside of the gatefold. Don't think they sell those anymore, but that's something you could have had on your wall in the 70s. This is with Bill Cobham on drums, Ron Carter on bass, Airto on percussion, Yumir Deodato on piano. He also does some arrangement for strings. Eric Gale on guitar, Horace Parlin and Richard T. also on piano. And of course, Stanley Turrentine on tenor sax. This includes the classic track Gibraltar, which is a famous one from those days that's been covered by many a jazzer. The Birds Untitled from 1970. I think this is my favorite Birds album. It's a double LP, 1 disc live, and including the fantastic opener, Lover of the Bayou, and a side-long version of 8 Miles High, all jammed out. And just some good stuff on the second disc, the studio disc. Now, this is an album that I purchased few years back, and guy had a beautiful copy. Beautiful. Cover was really nice, discs looked pristine, and when it came to me, the post office had banged it up and cracked both discs. So I've been looking for at least a mintier set of discs, and this is actually the cover of that older copy with the new discs that I got on an eBay sale just as a trial. And they're not perfect, and in fact they're not a perfect match. The pressing isn't the same, so this is just a holding pattern. I'm still on the lookout for the exact right pair of discs to go in this still really nice cover that somehow didn't get damaged when the vinyl got ruined by the Postal Service. And finally, the person who sent me that Birds album included a filler, and it was Neil Young's Harvest. Only it was in the cover of Neil Young's Hawks and Doves. So I didn't really want it in the same cover. I thought, well, I don't have Harvest. I might as well keep this disc. But I just found this generic cover to put it in. And there it is, Neil Young's Harvest. A Pro 12-inch, for whatever that's worth. Okay, that's my babble for the Ides of March. Thanks very much for watching. Be well. I'll talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.